I'll start with a quick introduction to SolidWorks. I think it'll accelerate the learning process once we actually start using the software. SolidWorks is like most 3D modeling packages, and that is, there's basically a 3-step process. And that will be where you produce a sketch, then you're going to dimension and constrain that sketch, and then you're going to extrude the sketch to create the 3D object. SolidWorks uses parametric modeling, similar to what we saw with Inventor, whereas if you compare it to AutoCAD, what you had to do was draw everything to exact size. With parametric modeling, what you're going to do is sketch the general shape. You don't have to be too concerned about the dimensions, and then add the actual dimensions to change the shape to meet the dimensions. And what happens is the size and shape of the part is going to change to match the dimensions that you apply. When you're creating a sketch, one thing you're going to do is add dimensions to control the size of the part. But you can also add geometric constraints, and those constraints will do is control the relationship and the size of features. For example, if something is horizontal or vertical, perpendicular, concentric, etc. So those are relatively easy to add to the sketch, which help control the size and shape of the part. The goal of the assignments in this class is going to be to produce drawings. Now, in order to produce those drawings, first you're going to create the 3D model. So you'll go through the sketching, constraining, and extruding process. Then you're going to save that, then import that model onto a drawing sheet. On the drawing sheet, you'll add the dimensions, hidden lines, etc. And make sure that always put your drawings on a B-size sheet of paper. Using the mouse in SolidWorks is a little bit different than Inventor. Now the left mouse button is still for selecting items on the menu and also for drawing on the screen. The right mouse button will let you access other menus. It will also act like an enter key to finish a command. Now here's where it's different than Inventor. The middle mouse button is used to rotate the model. The scroll wheel is the same, and that'll let you zoom in and out. In order to pan, what you have to do is hold down the control key and then hold down the middle mouse button and move the mouse in order to pan, which would move the part linearly on the screen. Just a quick review of some of the basics of good sketching practices. I would tell you to look at what you're trying to create and plan your first sketch. The first sketch is kind of important. It will help make the model easier if you have a good first sketch. Try to pick a view that creates a good base for adding other features to the part. One thing I try to do is look at the object and see if part of it is circular. I would typically try to incorporate that circular feature into the first sketch. And also, if the part is symmetrical, always try to build it around the origin. You do want to keep in mind where the origin is whenever you're sketching, but if it's symmetrical, put the origin in the middle. It makes a much better part. For efficiency's sake, when you're starting a sketch, what I recommend you do is just create a rough sketch of the general shape and then go back and add the dimensions and the constraints. Let's see, just a few words about extruding with SolidWorks. Now, this is probably one of the major differences between SolidWorks and some of the other modeling packages, and that is, with SolidWorks, if you have a positive volume, if you want to create a physical material, you're going to use the extrude command. If you're trying to cut a hole in something, create a negative volume, then there's actually a separate icon, and it's extrude cut. Also, I would remind you that if you have a part that's symmetrical, I recommend you extrude it in both directions. It gives you a lot more flexibility down the road with your part that you've created. So once you've created your models and you go to put it on a sheet of paper, I find people struggle a lot with establishing the views on the sheet of paper. It seems like a minor issue, but it's very important to people looking at this drawing to be able to understand it. So what we're going to present for most of the drawings are 3 orthographic views and 1 isometric view. So one thing I would tell you is don't let the software decide what the views are going to be. It's up to you to pick the view, and that would be first and foremost choosing the proper front view. So the rules about how to choose a view. For the front view, it should be the main view. Think about the view that shows the most detail, the most information about the part. It also has the fewest hidden lines shown. And typically what we try to do is take the longest dimension and lay it horizontally across the paper. Remember how we use our paper in a landscape mode. It's longer horizontally, so put the longest dimension like that. Then your top view, which will be projected above the front view, and the right side view, which is projected to the right. So typically we do a front, top, right side view. We'll also be adding an isometric view since we have a 3D model, and that would be in the upper right-hand corner. And again, choose a view. Don't let the software decide. Choose a view that shows the most information about the part and also in a stable orientation. So don't make the part look like it's out of balance or falling over or it's trying to balance on the tip of something. One of the last things you're going to do in your drawing is add the dimensions. And it's very critical that you have good dimensions on your drawing. There's some basics that you just need to follow. For one is try to spread your dimensions around on the 3 views, but leave some space around the views. Don't crowd the view. Make it easy to see what the object looks like, but yet you still see the dimensions. And try to leave an even amount of space between the dimensions so it looks balanced. It doesn't just look like you randomly put dimensions on there. And only dimension each feature one time. You want to make sure that all the features have dimension on them, so don't make people try to figure out how big something is or have to add up a bunch of numbers to figure out the size of something. An easy way to do your dimensions is start with the shortest dimension first. So what's the shortest dimension? Do that one first. Then the next longest, and so forth, and you'll have a nice even setup for how you laid out your dimensions. And also don't cross through dimensions. If you're crossing through your dimensions, you're not following the rule I just discussed where you go with the shortest and then the longer. And one thing that people tend to forget a lot of is when you have a hole in a part, it requires 2 things. The size of the hole and also the location of the hole.